Imagine never experiencing the finality of death, a reality where every time you should have died, you simply awaken to a new world as if nothing happened. This unsettling concept, whispered about in the margins of physics and philosophy, is known as quantum immortality. It suggests that nobody ever actually dies. Consciousness never experiences death. Instead, when one version of you perishes, your awareness might shift to a parallel universe in which you survived. It sounds like science fiction or a wild conspiracy theory. Yet, its origins trace back to legitimate scientific musings about quantum mechanics and the multiverse. In this expose, we delve into the scientific roots of quantum immortality, the philosophers who grappled with its implications, eerie real-life stories hinting at it, and the whispers of suppression around this bizarre idea. By the end, you may find yourself questioning whether death is truly as absolute as we've been led to believe, or if, in the shadows of the quantum realm, the truth is too strange and too dangerous to be accepted. At the heart of quantum immortality lies quantum mechanics, a field of physics that famously challenges our common sense. To understand how immortality enters the picture, we must start with a thought experiment devised in 1935 by Erwin Schrödinger. Imagine a cat sealed in a box with a deadly setup, a vial of poison that will be broken if a radioactive atom decays. Quantum physics says that before we check, the atom is in a superposition, both decayed and not decayed at the same time. Thus, in that strange quantum sense, the cat is both alive and dead at once. Of course, when the box is opened, we see a single definite outcome: either a living cat or a dead cat, not both. This is Schrödinger's famous paradox, meant to illustrate how baffling quantum theory can be. One resolution to this paradox is the bold many-worlds interpretation, MWI, proposed by physicist Hugh Everett III in 1957. Many-worlds interpretation declares that whenever a quantum event has multiple possible outcomes, the universe splits into parallel branches. In one branch, the cat lives. In another, the cat dies. These countless parallel universes comprise a vast multiverse where every possible outcome actually occurs. In one universe, you open Schrödinger's box to a purring cat, and in another, you're mourning a tragedy. According to Everett, reality doesn't choose a single path. It takes all paths. The catch is that these parallel worlds do not interact, making this theory nearly impossible to test. Not surprisingly, Everett's idea was met with fierce criticism and even ridicule by the scientific establishment for decades. In fact, Everett himself eventually left academia, his radical theory largely ignored in its time. Yet over the years, many-worlds interpretation has gained traction as a serious interpretation of quantum mechanics. With the stage set by many worlds, enter the haunting thought experiment of quantum suicide. First conceived in the 1980s by theorists like Ewan Squires, Hans Moravec, and Bruno Marchal, and later formalized by physicist Max Tegmark in 1998. Quantum suicide is essentially Schrödinger's cat from the cat's point of view. Imagine a scientist in a lethal contraption, a quantum gun, loaded such that each time he pulls the trigger, a quantum event determines if the gun fires or harmlessly clicks. Each trigger pull has, say, a 50% chance to kill the experimenter instantly. Now, according to Copenhagen, the single world view, if the gun fires, that's the end, experiment over. But under many worlds, every trigger pull splits the universe. In one branch, the scientist dies. In another, he miraculously lives on. From the outsider's perspective, after enough trials, the experimenter is almost surely dead. And indeed, in most universes he is. But from the experimenter's own perspective, they never experience their death. They only wake up in the branch where they survive, again and again. If many worlds is true, the scientist would hear click, click, click every time he pulls the trigger, seemingly defying the odds and surviving when by all rights he should not. In theory, after countless attempts, the experimenter would prove to himself that he's immortal, since he keeps on living no matter what. This eerie scenario is the core of quantum immortality, the subjective experience of surviving when you should have died. Of course, actually attempting such an experiment would be exceedingly dangerous and foolish and selfish in the extreme. As cosmologist Anthony Aguirre put it, the vast majority of your alternate selves would perish, a steep price for the lone survivor who learns he's unkillable. Even Everett, whose many worlds theory inspired this idea, only mused privately about testing it via Russian roulette and never suggested anyone should try it. Everett reportedly believed his theory assured him a form of immortality, reasoning that his consciousness would always follow a branch where he's alive. He once darkly joked about wagering his life on a quantum gamble and always winning. In public, however, he didn't publish these ideas, and perhaps for good reason. Quantum immortality, while a logical extension of many worlds, pushes into deeply unsettling territory. It blurs the line between physics and philosophy, forcing us to ask, what does it mean to always survive? And who or what is the you that lives on? If quantum immortality has any bearing on reality, might there be hints of it in the world around us? While we, thankfully, don't see people surviving point-blank gunshots by magic, there are uncanny stories of individuals who have cheated death so many times that one wonders if something odd is at play. These cases are anecdotal and not proof of anything, but they sure are fascinating to contemplate in a quantum light. Consider the story of Frane Selak, a Croatian man often dubbed the world's luckiest or unluckiest man. Born in 1929, Selak's life reads like a twisted script where everything that can go wrong does, yet he walks away every time. His run of near-death escapes began in 1957 and included at least 7 horrific incidents. Vehicle disasters. Selak survived a train derailment into an icy river, and later a bus crash that also plunged into a river. Explosions and crashes. He was in not one but 2 separate car explosions, emerging unharmed. He also fell out of an airplane mid-flight after a door malfunction, yet somehow landed on a haystack, suffering only minor injuries. He walked away after driving off a cliff, saved only by a tree snagging his fall. And as if all that wasn't enough, he was even hit by a bus and survived. After all these narrow escapes, Selak went on to win the lottery in 2003, as if the universe decided to reward his outrageous fortune. He lived into his 90s. Understandably, many are skeptical of parts of his tale. It sounds almost too incredible. But Selak swore it was true. Reality is much stranger than fiction, he said, echoing a sentiment quantum theorists might agree with. In a conspiratorial whisper, one might ask, was Selak simply a man of extreme luck? Or did he, perhaps unknowingly, benefit from quantum immortality, hopping timelines with each accident, It's the kind of spooky speculation that keeps the legend of Selak alive on internet forums to this day. Then there are the countless stories of ordinary people with uncanny near-death experiences. Have you ever heard someone say, "I should have died that day," after a freak accident? Perhaps a car crash that by all logic was unsurvivable, yet they walked away with barely a scratch. Some of these survivors report an eerie feeling, as if in another reality they did die. In fact, anecdotally, people have shared stories like this online. One moment, I remember the impact and everything going black. The next, I was back on the highway, heart pounding, somehow unhurt, with a subtle sense that the world around me was strangely different. In one account, a driver vividly recalled being hit head-on and seeing their own crumpled car, only to jolt awake in a perfectly intact vehicle, driving safely, with a memory of the crash that never happened. It's impossible to verify such stories, of course. They could be dreams, hallucinations, or the brain's way of coping with trauma. But they've led some to wonder, did those people actually die in one branch of reality and consciously continue in another? As one writer framed it, perhaps you experienced death in a different timeline, but your consciousness continued in an alternate reality. Even more broadly, there's the curious phenomenon known as the Mandela effect, where masses of people remember historical details differently than recorded history. Famous examples include the spelling of the Berenstain Bears, or whether a certain childhood movie existed. Some playful theories suggest that Mandela effect memories are glimpses of other timelines. If quantum immortality were happening on a global scale, say humanity collectively avoids an apocalyptic disaster by shifting to a parallel universe, perhaps we'd notice tiny discrepancies, little glitches in reality as evidence of the switch. Indeed, a TikTok theorist speculated that if we survived an apocalypse in one world by moving to another, the only clues would be slight differences between the worlds and new Mandela effects. Maybe you recall a logo or name wrong, because in the universe you came from, it was that way. It's far-fetched, certainly more sci-fi than science, but the idea adds to the ominous aura. If quantum immortality quietly saved us, how would we even know? We'd just go on living, noticing a few odd mismatched memories, until perhaps we're the only ones left, hopping alone from one surviving branch to the next. Of course, mainstream scientists would likely roll their eyes at using the Mandela effect or a lucky survivor story as evidence of quantum physics. Quantum immortality isn't a lone theory drifting in the dark. No, it's tangled in a web of even stranger ideas, each one peeling back another layer of what we think we know about life, death, and whatever might lie beyond. Let's start with quantum consciousness. Some researchers, like physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, believe that the brain may operate, at least in part, on quantum principles. If that's true, then maybe your conscious mind plays an active role in deciding which version of reality you live in, not just observing, but anchoring you in the timelines where you continue to exist. In the world of physics, the observer effect doesn't need a human. Any measurement will do. But in the public imagination, it's often twisted into something more mystical, mind over matter. Could your consciousness be surfing the multiverse, quietly choosing the paths where you survive? There's no proof, and most scientists would say it's fantasy. But the question lingers like a glitch in the matrix. What is consciousness? And if it really is quantum, Could that explain why your experience never stops? Now, things get even darker with something called quantum resurrection. If the multiverse is infinite, and every possibility happens somewhere, then what if, somewhere out there, you come back? You die in this timeline, but in another, a freak quantum fluctuation, a distant civilization, or an advanced AI somehow reassembles you atom by atom. You return, maybe tomorrow, maybe a billion years from now, maybe you already have. It sounds like science fiction, because it is. But in a universe where anything not forbidden is inevitable, the resurrection of a single person, even you, might just be a matter of time. This isn't reincarnation. This is quantum immortality on steroids. And then there's the simulation hypothesis. The idea that all of this, is a computer simulation. If it is, then maybe death isn't real. Maybe it's just a reset. You crash, the program reloads, you wake up in a different branch, game on. Some say that's what quantum immortality really is, not physics, but a feature of the simulation, a failsafe in the code, stopping you from ever perceiving your own end. One article even asked, can quantum physics keep the simulation from being unplugged? A multiverse protecting its players, a universe designed to never let you die. These ideas, consciousness, resurrection, simulation, all orbit the same black hole. The terrifying question of what happens when we die. Are we immortal quantum shadows drifting between timelines, digital minds in a cosmic sandbox, or just meat and luck, alive by chance, gone in a blink? One thing's for sure, quantum mechanics didn't mean to open the door to immortality, but it might have, and now we can't look away. Given how radical quantum immortality sounds, it's no surprise that the mainstream scientific community largely regards it with skepticism, if not outright dismissal. You won't find government research grants or university labs openly attempting to prove someone immortal via quantum suicide. The idea is considered untestable nonsense by many and merely an interesting thought experiment by others. The very nature of the theory shields it from conventional testing. Any successful experimenter would be alive only in a branch inaccessible to the rest of us, and all other observers would see a fatal failure. This catch-22 means that from the outside, quantum immortality can never be confirmed. It lives in a Schrödinger's box of its own, plausible from the inside, unprovable from the outside. Over the years, some theorists have indeed felt that discussing quantum immortality was professionally dangerous, a quick way to not be taken seriously. Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation itself was a victim of academic resistance. In the late 1950s, Niels Bohr and others adhering to the orthodox Copenhagen interpretation gave Everett's ideas a chilly reception. Everett left academia, and for a long time his multiverse theory was talked about only in hushed tones or as a quirky footnote. It wasn't until decades later that people like Bryce DeWitt and others revived and championed many worlds. By then, the whiff of fringe had somewhat faded, but quantum immortality, an offshoot implication of many worlds, has kept a distinctly fringe status. Physicists tend to mention it with a chuckle, or not at all, except in the context of illustrating many worlds' strange consequences. There is a sense that the topic is almost taboo. Some scientists worry that popular fascination with quantum immortality could lead to dangerous misinterpretations, like thrill seekers attempting lethal stunts, wrongly believing they'll survive in their subjective experience. Indeed, every serious exposition on it carries a warning. Do not try this at home or anywhere else. This air of suppression and conspiracy around quantum immortality makes it ripe for dark speculation. In an ominous tone, one might ask, if it were true, who would stand to gain? Perhaps those in power, governments, secret research programs, billionaires chasing eternal life would be intensely interested. One can imagine a shadowy research lab, buried deep in some classified facility, where unwitting subjects are exposed to quantum death trials in an attempt to verify the theory. Such a scenario sounds like a sci-fi horror film, and to our knowledge, no evidence of any government experimenting with quantum immortality exists, but it certainly fuels the imagination. Conspiracy forums sometimes latch onto any whiff of parallel universe research. For instance, wild rumors that the Large Hadron Collider experiments at CERN have caused shifts in reality or timeline merges, citing the Mandela effect as evidence. While these claims don't hold up to scientific scrutiny, they show the appetite for believing that authorities know more about other universes than they let on. Another angle is the idea that knowledge of quantum immortality might be suppressed because of its profound existential and moral implications. If tomorrow it were accepted as true that you will consciously survive no matter what, society could face turmoil. Would some people become reckless, engaging in extreme behavior under the assumption they'll personally never suffer the ultimate consequence? Even if they're wrong and wind up dead, they wouldn't be around to regret it. A dangerous catch. How would concepts of law, justice, or deterrence change if everyone believed in a multiverse safety net for their soul? It's not hard to imagine governments and institutions preferring that people not believe such a thing, even if it were true, to maintain order. Far easier to dismiss it as fantasy than to deal with the ethical paradoxes it raises. In truth, the scientific establishment doesn't need a grand conspiracy to reject quantum immortality. Occam's razor and scientific conservatism do the job. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and this claim may well be impossible to evidence. Thus, it stays on the outskirts, discussed in niche conferences, speculative papers, and late-night dorm conversations, but absent from any official doctrine. Yet, the very lack of clarity keeps the door open for conspiracy-minded curiosity. The theory isn't disproven, it's just unproven and arguably unfalsifiable. It lingers like a ghost at the banquet of physics, daring the bravest or craziest to take it seriously. We have journeyed through quantum theory, philosophy, and the twilight realm of speculation to piece together the puzzle of quantum immortality. What emerges is a picture as thrilling as it is disquieting. If you take the many worlds idea to its logical end, death might not be an absolute full stop, but rather a comma, a brief pause before consciousness carries on in another sentence of the cosmic story. You could live 1,000 lives, always one heartbeat away from oblivion, yet never experiencing it firsthand. Over centuries, you watch everyone around you perish, while you remain, aging, injured, perhaps longing for rest that never comes. It is a prospect both wondrous and horrifying. Crucially, none of this has been proven. To most scientists, quantum immortality is an intriguing thought experiment that would be foolish to guide one's actions in real life. And maybe that's for the best. Perhaps the universe's deepest mercy is that we don't know if this is our fate. We live our lives under the assumption that they will end, an assumption that gives life meaning and urgency. Yet, late at night, when confronted with a narrow brush with death or the loss of someone dear, one can't help but wonder, what if somewhere, somehow, another version of events played out? What if every tragedy has a parallel world where it was averted? It's a comforting thought, or maybe a deeply unsettling one. In the end, quantum immortality blurs the line between empirical science and metaphysical conjecture. It forces us to ask what death really means in a quantum multiverse. Is it the end of awareness, or just the end of one thread of awareness? So far, no one has returned from beyond the veil, or from a neighboring universe, with an answer we can verify. We are left with only tantalizing theories and our own willingness to imagine. As you finish hearing this, you remain alive. In this universe at least. There is a version of you that survives everything, until perhaps the end of time itself, ifet.com. But is that comforting or terrifying? Maybe the truth is indeed too strange or too dangerous for us to fully accept. For now, quantum immortality remains a shadowy hypothesis, an idea at the fringe, waiting in the dark. To quote the poet Dylan Thomas, do not go gentle into that good night. And if the quantum immortality proponents are right, perhaps we never do. Perhaps, in ways we are only beginning to fathom, we rage against the dying of the light, and the light never truly dies. All we can do is live on, and one day find out for ourselves, or never find out, if immortality of a sort is our lot. Until then, the enigma endures, and the last secret of quantum immortality remains hidden in the unobserved depths of the multiverse. Alive or dead, Schrödinger's cat keeps us guessing.